Hey folks, pop culture historian Dave Sundstrom here, and in this video I am going to provide whatever happened to updates on Alison Arngrim, Barbie Benton, David Naughton, Cassandra Peterson, Gary Sandy, and I'll wrap things up with Christy McNichol. So hopefully you'll stick around. I think you'll really enjoy this video. And even before we get going, hey, thanks so much for watching. Just look at that face. I can tell you right now that whatever that darn Nellie Oleson is contemplating, well, she's up to no good. That said, the actress who played Nellie, well, she's completely different. In fact, one might say that she was and is the polar opposite of the character that she played on television so many years ago. And I bet, after you're done watching this video, you're likely to see Nellie, Alison, in a completely different light. So for those of us that have been around long enough to remember Little House on the Prairie's debut on NBC, we know that it was an instant hit, and it certainly was in my home as well. My own father had read us the Little House books at bedtime, and because of that, this show quickly became my sister Valerie's favorite thing to watch each week. I liked it, but I didn't love it the same way that she did. Still, there was a lot for me to enjoy about the series. I've already talked in another video about this guy. Yep, Mr. Edwards is played by Victor French. Well, he was just like I had imagined him when my father had read us those books so long ago. Sure, he was a rough and tumble, troubled, salt-of-the-earth kind of feller, but he also had an absolute heart of gold. And then there was that darn Nellie Oleson. When the real Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote about Nellie in her books, the character was actually an amalgamation of a few girls that Laura had known growing up. You know, Alison really did a great job with the character. She was so much fun to watch as she did all sorts of smart alecky and sometimes rotten things to the other kids in Walnut Creek. And while Alison and Melissa Gilbert played characters that, let's just say, were not the best of friends, off screen and in real life, they were exactly that, really good friends. You've already suspected this, right? I've been leading up to this. Alison was playing against type. Because, quite frankly, the lady is about as nice and as kind as they come. By the way, Melissa and Alison remain extremely good friends to this very day. Speaking of friendships, Alison also enjoyed working with Catherine McGregor on the show. McGregor was also playing against type as Nellie's gossipy and self-centered mother, Harriet. And when McGregor passed away in 2018, it was refreshing to read the tributes that the various child actors shared online. Melissa Gilbert remembered Catherine as taking an interest in all of the kids that worked on the show, helping them to do their very best. And Alison's tribute referenced the actress's inner beauty. So we're more than a couple minutes into the video, and here's what you should know. Alison is nothing like Nellie. She's just not. Sadly, a role like that, however, is going to lead to one getting a bit typecast. Yes, Alison did land a handful of other roles on shows like Love Boat and Fantasy Island, but for the most part, and for better or worse, actors and actresses like Alison who find themselves typecast simply have to find a way to turn a potentially negative situation into a positive. And that, my friends, is exactly what Alison has done. When it became clear to her that people were really having a hard time seeing past Nellie, she pivoted and channeled her energy and talent into a new career as a stand-up comedian. And while she was reinventing herself as a comic, Alison was also realizing that being remembered as Nellie, well, it wasn't all that bad. In 2002, Alison was honored by the Young Artist Foundation with its former Child Star Lifetime Achievement Award. And even better than that, at the 2006 TV Land Awards, Arngrim tied with Danielle Spencer, yep, good old D from What's Happening, as the character most in need of a timeout. You know, it's really great when you can look back and laugh at the characters that you played on TV, and Alison has been able to do exactly that. Alison has also found time to look beyond her own situation. She's extremely active and involved in a variety of different causes. Her friend and fellow actor Steve Tracy, who played Nellie's husband at the tail end of Little House on the Prairie, he died from complications of AIDS. And after his passing in 1986, Arngrim began doing what she could to build a greater awareness around AIDS, including the promotion of the organization ACT UP. and as time would permit, she would also help cover the AIDS hotline in her area. And in 2004, Arngrim revealed on Larry King Live that she herself was a victim of child abuse and an incest survivor. And because of that, she has become a frequent spokesperson against child abuse, most notably with the organization Protect. In 2010, Alison published her autobiography, and while she does talk about her own case of abuse, most importantly, she just does a great job of making the book lighthearted and fun. More than anything else, it is just a wonderful trip down memory lane. She has also wrote and performed a stage version of her autobiography, which premiered in New York, but has since been performed all around the world. Folks just love Alison's frank, funny, and frequently fond reflections of her life both as Nellie and beyond. And Alison continues to find opportunities to reminisce about her time on the prairie. In particular, I really enjoyed a recent visit with Megyn Kelly. Her memories about auditioning for multiple roles on Little House on the Prairie are just priceless. End of the day, it's been a pretty decent career for Ms. Arngrim. For whatever reason, the French really seem to enjoy her character on Little House, so every year she spends some time over there as well. Alright, now it's your turn. Please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And I would be absolutely honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly television from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. So, if you were a teenage boy in the 70s, I have little doubt in my mind that you know who this lady is. In this video, I'll share a few memories that I have of Barbie, as well as provide an update regarding what she's been up to lately. My first recollection of anything related to Barbi Benton was an album, this one here to be exact, that my friend Dave Nilsson had. I don't remember any of the songs on it, I really don't, but I am aware that Barbie had a number of country music hits in the mid-70s. In particular, there was a song called Brass Buckles, which went all the way to number 5 on the US country charts. Over the course of the next decade or so, Barbie would release 7 albums, including a greatest hits collection in 1976. Her most recent album, titled Kinetic Voyage, was released in 1988, and it made a surprising hard right turn and shifted gears from country to new age music. So with all this said, I've got to admit that Barbie's music career wasn't really where she caught my eye. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that TV was the medium where I truly became more familiar with lots of different actors' work, and Barbi Benton was no exception. I watched her on Hee Haw from time to time and noticed Ms. Benton both performing comedy and music on that show. However, in my mind, it was her work on many of the awesome Aaron Spelling TV shows of the 70s that made her something of a pop culture icon. Seriously, I lost track of how many times Barbi Benton was on Fantasy Island. It had to be like 8 or 9 times during that show's run. That show, along with The Love Boat, aired one after another on Saturday nights here in the US, and they were must-see television for me. I loved the anthology format of both shows, the great actors and actresses that would appear on them, and I certainly didn't mind when Barbi Benton showed up from time to time. So I mentioned Love Boat. I believe that she made 4 appearances on that show. Plus there was Charlie's Angels, Vegas, Chips, Matt Houston. Well, you get it. The list goes on and on. Barbie was very much in demand as a guest star on primetime television. So much so that she was even a guest performer on one of my favorite annual events, the 1980 edition of Circus of the Stars.
Sunday, watch your favorite entertainers risk their lives in 2 fantastic hours of thrills and spills and danger. The 5th annual Circus of the Stars, Sunday night.
This is CBS.
And truthfully, it wasn't until years later that I became aware that Ms. Benton's first brush with fame came from being Hugh Hefner's steady gal for 7 years beginning in 1969. From what I understand, she also made a few appearances in his magazine. However, if you're watching this video to see those pictures, well, you've come to the wrong place. That said, I will share a couple of facts from that particular period in Barbie's life. The first being that when the 42-year-old Hefner asked Barbie out for the first time, her response to him was, "I don't know, I've never dated anyone over 24 before." To which he responded, "That's okay, neither have I." Also interesting is that despite her long relationship with Hef, Benton was never showcased as one of the magazine's featured Playmates of the Month. In 1979, Barbie married real estate developer George Gradow and made a decision to take a step back from the entertainment industry. She didn't completely disappear. Semi-retirement is probably the best way to describe Barbie in the late 80s and early 90s, as she and George raised their 2 children. More recently, Barbie has appeared as herself on a handful of reality TV shows, including The Girls Next Door, Extreme Cribs, and $1 Million Rooms. At this point in life, it seems like Barbie is extremely content to bask in the genuine goodness that comes from friends and family. Although her children are grown now, they remain a really close family, and Barbie and George recently celebrated, get this, their 40th wedding anniversary. That's really quite an accomplishment these days. Congratulations to both of them. Additionally, Barbie has dedicated some of her time and energy to help advocate for greater awareness around worldwide reef conservation. In 2006, she was honored by the International Reef Check Foundation for her efforts. And even more recently, a Facebook page has been set up to advocate for an appearance by Barbie on Dancing with the Stars. If you're interested in learning more about that, just type Barbie's name and Dancing with the Stars in the Facebook search box and you'll be able to like and follow this particular page. Despite the noble efforts to get Barbie out of retirement and onto Dancing with the Stars, something tells me that she really enjoys her life now. Sure, the fanfare and acclaim from the public has died down quite a bit, but I've got to believe that her life now feels so much more real and authentic than the time that she spent in the limelight decades ago. So that's it. What do you think? Were you a fan of Barbi Benton's? Was it her music, or television appearances, or something else? Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're at it, I would appreciate it if you clicked on the thumbs up icon and maybe even considered subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so very much for watching. This guy, holy cow, way back in 1980, I thought he was just about the biggest star in the world. I know, he wasn't, and he certainly isn't right now, but I've got to say, for that brief moment in time, David Naughton was indeed a force to be reckoned with. Let me explain. So I'm going to start here and then work backwards before I jump into talking about what Mr. Naughton is up to these days. Because you see, An American Werewolf in London is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Take it from Wolfman Jack, the critics and I agree. This is the most outrageous horror film that you'll ever see, because David is having the most frightening nightmares of his life. It may have been someone he ate. From the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal. An American Werewolf in London, rated R.
Now playing in a selected theater near you. Check your local newspaper for listings.
I've always been a big fan of John Landis's work, from Animal House to the Blues Brothers and beyond. There was a period when everything that John Landis did was high quality, grade A entertainment, and this movie is certainly no exception. And Naughton, along with co-stars Griffin Dunne and Jenny Agutter, are perfectly cast in this movie. Naughton plays David Kessler, who, I can't imagine this being a surprise to anyone at this point, is attacked while backpacking across the moors of Yorkshire and becomes a werewolf. Like all of Landis's films, there are some pretty funny moments in this movie, but for the most part, I'd say this one is a horror movie most of the way through. And because Naughton is seen without clothes at certain points in this film, the good folks at the Dr. Pepper Bottling Company, well, they felt like they had to let him go from his commercial contract. These days, no one would care. But way back then, well, it was a pretty big deal. And an even bigger deal when you think about just how much Naughton lost. Much like his character David Kessler, this dude lost his shirt on the deal. Naughton had been in a grundle of Dr. Pepper commercials over the course of 4 years prior to the release of An American Werewolf in London, and that Dr. Pepper jingle was quite the earworm that I can still hear in my head to this day.
I
Dr. Pepper, don't you know? It's the original taste that I love so. And the taste is making peppers everywhere I go. There's greeting peppers, eating peppers, choir peppers, shire peppers. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? There's winning peppers, spinning peppers, none peppers, fun peppers. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? Be a pepper, drink Dr. Pepper. Be a pepper.
You know what is another earworm? This song. Yep, Making It, as sung by David Naughton, was a hit. A top 10 hit, in fact, way back in 1979. Unfortunately, the TV series that the song Making It came from wasn't quite as successful, airing for only 9 episodes on ABC during the same year.
Boy, that's disgusting.
It makes my stomach crawl.
Guys, listen, I told you it's a mistake.
I really thought that this TV show was going to be big. It was by the creators of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, plus it had Naughton in it, and it had that great theme song. How could it lose? Just goes to show what I know. Also, prior to the release of An American Werewolf in London, Naughton starred in a non-Disney branded Disney film called Midnight Madness along with actress Deborah Klinger. I think these days this movie is best known for being actor Michael J. Fox's first film appearance. Alright, enough backtracking. Let's get back to Werewolf. The movie was a modest hit at the box office, and critics were generally kind to the movie as well as the actors in it, so you would think that Naughton's star would have been flying high, right? Well, I don't know. It just didn't work out that way. Sure, Naughton got more lead roles, but the feature films were in things like Hot Dog the Movie. Not exactly highbrow entertainment, if you know what I mean. Of course, Gene Simmons' better half was in that movie, so I guess it has that going for it. And in 1986, Naughton did land a recurring gig on the Pam Dauber and Rebecca Schaefer sitcom My Sister Sam. Sadly, this show ended after 2 seasons and 44 episodes, and even sadder, Rebecca Schaefer's life would be taken from her by an obsessed fan a year later in 1989. Truly tragic. But I'm getting off topic, as I often do, so let's get back to David Naughton. In '88, he starred in the Vanna White TV movie Goddess of Love, and after that, Naughton seemed to pay the bills by showing up as a guest star on a bunch of different TV shows like Murder, She Wrote, MacGyver, Seinfeld, Diagnosis Murder, Melrose Place, and even Touched by an Angel. Whew, this guy definitely knew how to stay busy. That said, as the years passed, David became more known as a hard-working and dependable journeyman actor instead of that big box office draw like, say, Michael J. Fox. So what has happened to David Naughton over the past couple of decades? Where did he go? Well, he did manage to have a life outside of the entertainment industry. He got married, had a couple of really great kids, and since it is relatively clear to me that, based on my research, David values keeping his personal life private, I'll just leave it at that. But he has also been steady at it when it comes to finding work, in addition to showing up on TV shows like Psych, Big Love, The Mentalist, and Grey's Anatomy. Naughton has also done quite a bit of voiceover work on both animated TV shows as well as computer games. And in 2013, he was cast as a regular on the TV show Granite Flats, playing a character named Dr. Millard Widdowson, the head of Granite Flats Hospital and the CIA contact for Project Madman, part of Project MKUltra. I only caught a couple of episodes of that particular series, but it sounds downright X-File-ish. And even more recently, Naughton showed up in the 5th installment of the Sharknado TV movie franchise, playing a character aptly named Ambassador Kessler. Could it be that this guy's first name was David, and that Naughton was actually playing the same character that he played so many years ago in An American Werewolf in London? Probably not, as that movie seemed to have a rather definitive ending for David Kessler. Probably just a nice shout-out and a tip of the hat to pop culture geeks everywhere, such as myself. Like I said earlier, David does seem to value keeping his private life exactly that, private. But I do feel like it's okay to point out that he does have a Facebook page, and based on the photos that are publicly available to view there, I would say that it is legitimately him. However, if you really want to connect with Mr. Naughton, your best bet is to hit one of those fan conventions that comes to most major cities 1 or 2 times each year. I love that David finds time to attend these events, and by doing so, continues to connect with horror and science fiction fans, both young and old. All right, let's end this thing here with a picture of Jenny Agutter. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. As much as I liked her in An American Werewolf in London, I think I enjoyed her even more in Logan's Run, and then later on in a little movie called Darkman. But that, my friends, is a topic for another day. Right now, please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be absolutely honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Okay, I've got to admit that Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, as played by actress Cassandra Peterson, has always been something of a guilty pleasure for me. The character's so cheesy and so over the top, but come on, admit it, she's also a ton of fun. And I know that I'm not the only one who feels this way, because at this point Elvira is something of a worldwide phenomenon, and believe it or not, Cassandra Peterson has been playing the character for almost 4 decades now. Elvira is, simply put, a cultural icon. So in 2007, when Elvira hosted a reality TV show on Fox to choose her successor, I thought she was done, calling it quits. However, that was not the case. It turns out that the winner, April Wallen, was actually chosen to help Elvira with an appearance schedule that was just turning out to be too darn much. Fast forward a decade or so, and while it seems like April is making a handful of appearances, Cassandra Peterson is still making most of the appearances herself. Still, she is slowing down a bit. In 2017, Cassandra officially called an end to her own Vegas-style show at Knott's Berry Farm that typically ran for about 6 weeks before Halloween. At the time, I believe Cassandra indicated that Elvira was moving into a stage of semi-retirement, or at least Cassandra was. That said, the original Elvira continues to make welcome appearances even to this day. One of her more recent appearances was as a judge on RuPaul's drag show, and just in time for Halloween 2020, Elvira is performing double duty. First, as an animated character in the new direct-to-video Scooby-Doo movie, and secondly, on YouTube in a new music video titled Don't Cancel Halloween. So you see, the answer to whatever happened to Elvira is a simple one. She never went away. And I believe that Elvira and Cassandra are going to be around for a very long time. So anyway, as long as you're here, did you know that early in Cassandra's life, a certain musician by the name of Elvis Presley changed her life forever? Stick around if you'd like to learn more. Let's travel back in time to the late 60s when a young Cassandra Peterson, well, she thought she had it made. She was dancing in Vegas in her late teens, and from what I've read, it seemed like she thought she couldn't reach any higher, do any more. She was on top of the world. And she was content to keep doing what she was doing until that day when someone would tell her she was just too darn old to be dancing in Vegas shows. It was around that same time that Cassandra met Elvis. He had come to see her dance at the Dunes Hotel, and after the show, Elvis, being Elvis, invited all the showgirls back to his hotel room, which was the entire top floor of the International Hotel. And well, let's just say it turned into a pretty big party. These days, Cassandra is quick to point out that while there might have been a little bit of smooching, her connection with Elvis was a brief one and a platonic one. There was an age difference, and quite frankly, because of that, Elvis, for one brief moment in time, became more of a mentor and a coach than anything else. And he was relentless with Cassandra about her potential, about what she could be. And in his mind, it was so much more than dancing in Las Vegas. They talked for hours, and Cassandra says it was some of the best advice that she had ever gotten. And due to that counsel, Cassandra made the gutsy decision to give up her career in Vegas. She went to Europe. She played in a band, and she found a couple of small movie roles. And while she kept working at first, it seemed like Elvis's belief in her might be a little bit unfounded. Was this it? What did she have to do to achieve the kind of success that Elvis thought that she was capable of, while still doing something that she truly loved. And it turned out that all Cassandra really had to do was go back to her childhood, to the crazy B-movie horror films of the 50s and 60s, the kind of movies that starred one of her idols, Vincent Price, the kind of movie that you could broadcast later at night on a Friday or Saturday, and you'd find a guaranteed audience of sleepless adults, along with a few young kids who were sleeping over at a friend's house. Lights would be dimmed and flashlights at the ready just in case things got too scary. As Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Cassandra's success seemed overnight and led to a feature film in the late 80s. Of course, her success had been anything but instantaneous. Still, Elvira took advantage of her newly found fame and worked tirelessly to ensure that the Mistress of the Dark was not just another flash in the pan. And of course, we all know now that her hard work has paid off handsomely. In addition to her oh-so-many talk show appearances, there was a follow-up movie, numerous TV specials, and of course, lots and lots of merch. Personally, being a DC Comics fan, I remember reading the revised version of House of Mystery with Elvira as host, and yes, I've played that pinball machine. As with most pinball machines, she got the best of me. Also, not sure if this is still true, but for many years, the Elvira costume was the #1 seller for Halloween. I should also probably point out that Elvira has recently put out what she's calling a coffin table book, containing 240 pages. This oversized book is filled with hundreds of photos of Elvira from the very beginning of her career through present day, some never before seen. This is the ultimate collector's book for fans of the Mistress of the Dark. I'll post an Amazon link to the book in the video description if you're interested in picking up a copy. Alright, let's see. What else can I tell you about Cassandra/Elvira? Maybe let's talk about a couple more movie roles, one of which she landed and the other one she didn't. For decades now, Cassandra has been great friends with actor Paul Reubens, also known as Pee Wee Herman. Since working with him as part of the improv and sketch comedy group The Groundlings, because of that friendship, Cassandra made a brief cameo in the classic Tim Burton movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That said, if you blinked, you missed her, because she was a member of the vicious motorcycle gang Satan's Helpers. Now, the role that Cassandra didn't get was for the 1981 TV movie The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island. After Tina Louise indicated that she didn't want to carry on playing the role that she'd made famous on the classic TV show, actress Judith Baldwin stepped in for the first 2 TV movies. But for the third and final movie in the trilogy, the role was once again up for grabs, and Peterson auditioned for it, only to lose out to fellow redhead actress Constance Forsland. All in all, I don't think it was that big of a loss. It was shortly after that audition that Cassandra was offered the role of hosting horror movies on TV that gave us the character of Elvira that we know and love to this very day. So that's it. What do you think? Are you a fan of Elvira, the Mistress of the Dark? And do you enjoy Halloween as much as I do? Let me know what you think in the comments section, and while you're at it, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up, and I would be absolutely honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. As I think back to the late 70s and early 80s, there is one show that I feel like really never got its due. Sure, WKRP in Cincinnati was a popular enough show, but it deserved more acclaim, more accolades, and quite frankly, to run a lot longer than it did on CBS TV. It was one of those shows that really deserves to be considered an all-time classic, and I don't know if WKRP got the respect it deserved back then, and definitely deserves now. A frequent question that I've gotten over the past couple of years, most recently from Patreon subscriber Justin Eilette, is whatever happened to Gary Sandy? It seems like he just disappeared, dropped off the face of the earth. Well, folks, I'm happy to report that nothing could be further from the truth. I'll provide an update on Gary's current activities in just a moment, but first let's talk about WKRP a bit more. Just look at that cast. Holy cow, what a talented group of people. Among my favorites are Gordon Jump and Jan Smithers, who I've done videos about in the past. But really, when I think about it, they were all my favorites, including Sandy's Andy Travis, who is the station's program director. Before coming to WKRP, he had a perfect record of turning around radio stations that were struggling. But with the crazy crew at WKRP, well, he definitely has his hands full if he wants to keep that streak alive. Wikipedia points out that the show's wonderful opening theme song is about Andy and his decision to settle down in Cincinnati. Before WKRP, Sandy learned the ropes on daytime television. At the time, many of them were done live, and it was doing those network soap operas that he fostered a love for performing in front of a live audience. Sandy also found guest star gigs on shows like Medical Center, Barnaby Jones, and one of my favorites, Starsky and Hutch. And after WKRP, Sandy continued to pay the bills by working on shows like Murder, She Wrote and LA Law. But like I said, he loved performing in front of a crowd. So it should come as no surprise that Gary looked for opportunities to do live theater on Broadway whenever he could. In the early 80s, he took over for Kevin Kline after he left Pirates of Penzance. And then he joined a bunch of television legends for the revival of Arsenic and Old Lace. Wow, just look at that cast. As cool as being in Pirates of Penzance had to be, I think working with Marianne Cunningham and Barnabas Collins is even cooler. Over the years, Gary has continued to tour the country and do live theater. I found this picture on Twitter of a 2015 appearance on Kansas City radio station KCUR. Yep, just two program directors hanging out and shooting the breeze. And there is a wonderful interview with Gary that was done in 2017 by TV station WTSP in Tampa Bay, Florida, where Gary talks about being in town to help teach aspiring young actors about performing in live theater. I've got to say, I love it when I find examples of actors giving back, and this clearly appears to be one of those times. If you want to find that interview, just Google the name Gary Sandy with Great Day Tampa Bay. Even more recently, Gary has been performing on stage as hard-boiled pulp fiction detective Mike Hammer. The play is staged in such a way that it is presented as a live radio production from the 30s or 40s. While Sandy roams the stage in character, the other actors actually perform as the radio cast in studio, bringing the drama to life. Being a fan of old-time radio dramas, I'd really love to see something like this if it ever came to Utah. End of the day, perhaps Gary says it best when people ask him where he's been. He simply replies back, "I never went away." In one of the interviews that I read as I prepared to make this video, Gary talked about how odd it is to turn on the television and see a younger version of himself on screen. I've got to admit, I hadn't thought much about what that kind of experience would be like. I can only imagine it could be both fun and a melancholy experience. One more little bit of trivia for those who have ever been asked the eternal question, Bailey or Jennifer. Gary answered it years ago as he was in a brief relationship with Lonnie Anderson. Okay, now it's your turn. Please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you for watching. Okay, so where do I start with this one? Seriously, folks, I'm going to have to rein myself in a bit, because for about 10 years, from the mid-70s on, it felt like Christy McNichol was everywhere. But since this video is a whatever happened to video, I'm only going to mention a handful of my favorite memories before I provide an update regarding what she's been up to more recently. Otherwise, this thing could last hours. I still remember this Dynamite magazine, and even though it says Meet Christy McNichol, I'm pretty sure I already knew who she was. Even before she became a breakout star on the TV show Family, more on that in a moment, she had been in commercials and guest starred on a number of shows like Starsky and Hutch and The Bionic Woman. However, like I said, it was on Family where Kristy really became a breakout star. She was the youngest member of the Lawrence family, a tomboy nicknamed Buddy. And I don't know, maybe it's just my old foggy memory, but it seemed like many of the shows during its 5-season run centered on Buddy. A couple of other things worth mentioning are that, yes, that's a pre-Family Ties Meredith Baxter Bernie there, and the actor who played the father on this show is James Broderick. Yep, that's right, father of Ferris. And here she is, cute as a button with Scott Baio, guest starring on The Love Boat. Seriously, folks, back then, being on The Love Boat was a rite of passage for every up-and-coming young star, as well as many of the really big stars from Hollywood's golden age. And I've also got to mention Little Darlings. If I remember correctly, this was Kristy's first big starring role in a major motion picture. I haven't seen this movie in years. I kind of wonder if it holds up. Still, the cast is great. Along with Kristy, you've got Tatum O'Neal, Armand Assante, and a very young Matt Dillon. And even though it was a major flop, I've got to at least, for a moment, talk about the pirate movie. Sure, there are a lot of things that you can nitpick about this film, but the soundtrack is incredible, and it was here that it dawned on me that Kristy really had a wonderful voice, and it was clear that she loved singing. Why this is so surprising, I do not know. Because prior to this movie, Kristy had released an album with her brother Jimmy and done some singing in the movie The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. Somewhere after the pirate movie and before Just the Way You Are, I remember hearing about difficulties that the studio was having getting that movie completed. I also vaguely recall hearing that there were issues with getting Kristy on the set. Still, when the movie was released in 1984, I remember seeing it in the theater with a group of friends, and we all agreed that Ms. McNichol was the very best part of the movie. And then you know what? She kind of disappeared for a few years. Rumor has it that she just wanted to live a normal life and went back to school to learn how to cut and style hair. And then in 1988, Kristy resurfaced on Empty Nest, an NBC situation comedy which was a spin-off from one of my favorite shows, The Golden Girls. This TV series was a ton of fun, mainly because of the standout cast. Isn't that always the case? Which included Richard Mulligan, Dinah Manoff, and David Leisure. A year later, Kristy bared her soul to People magazine and talked about her bipolar disorder and the severe depression that is brought about by a chemical imbalance in her body. Tough stuff, and Kristy had been dealing with it for years. At the time the article was written, Kristy had been working as an in-demand actress for over 20 years, and yet she was just 27. You know, when I think about other child actors that rode a similar wave of fame during the 70s and 80s, not many of them ended up in as good of a place as Kristy. And that's even with the health issues that she was so bravely fighting. In 1992, Kristy made the tough decision to leave Empty Nest. And when she returned for the series finale in 1995, that final bow she took on stage with the rest of her castmates, well, it really was a final bow. So what has she been doing since then? Well, the answer is really a whole heck of a lot. During the 90s, Kristy hosted her own tennis tournament, which benefited the Help Group, a charity that serves children with special needs related to autism, learning disabilities, ADHD, developmental delays, abuse, and other emotional problems. Kristy has also volunteered time assisting with marine wildlife conservation groups. From what I understand, she has even participated in rescues from time to time. End of the day, for a very long time, it seems to me that Kristy had wanted one thing. Really, the one thing that fame and fortune in Hollywood couldn't give her. A normal life. Years earlier, when she'd gone to school to learn how to become a hairstylist, I think she knew that she was going to have to take really drastic action if she ever wanted any sort of normalcy in her life. And for that reason, in June of 2001, Kristy announced through her publicist that she was officially retiring from acting. Now, to be clear, that retirement has been her way of saying that she wasn't going to be in front of the cameras anymore. It didn't mean that she didn't love the art and craft of acting. In fact, I've heard that Kristy has spent some of her free time with up-and-coming actors, helping them to hone their talents. And in 2012, Kristy came out of the closet and expressed a desire to be more open, honest, and authentic about the person that she truly was. At the time, she also said that she was coming out to try and help other kids who might be bullied because of who they were. I have just got to say, what a truly noble thing to do. And even more recently, Kristy lent her support to the Los Angeles Valley College's music department and encouraged other lovers of music to do the same through the school's foundation, which provides student scholarships and supports various campus music programs. That type of support shouldn't come as a surprise to any of us who watched her sing her heart out decades earlier. In fact, Kristy became familiar with the school's music department because she wanted an outlet for her passion for singing and enrolled in a class where she could participate in the college's choir. How cool is that? So, this Whatever Happened To video has my favorite kind of ending. The kind where I get to say that whoever is being spotlighted has managed to avoid most, if not all, of the pitfalls that far too frequently do folks in when it comes to the world of showbiz. Kristy truly is living her best life. I'm sure it still has trials. I'm sure it still has its fair share of ups and downs. But you know what? It's a normal life. And that, when it comes right down to it, is a pretty darn good thing. If you're trying to find Kristy out there on Twitter or Facebook, well, you're not going to have a whole heck of a lot of luck. But you know what? I think that's all right. I think that's part of her effort, her attempt to just step away from it all and live that normal life that I've talked about. All right, I can't help myself. We're going back to the pirate movie. If you want to watch that movie and hear Kristy sing, the whole thing right now is on YouTube. At some point, they're probably going to take it down. But my guess is that there will always be somewhere online where you can watch this often maligned musical gem. So, do you remember Christy McNichol? And if so, what was your favorite movie or TV show that she was in? Let me know in the comments section, and if you liked this video, I'd love a thumbs up. I'd also be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
You didn't have to do it, but you did. So thank you very much for your support, for your support, for your support. Thank you very much for your support.
Click on that thumbnail cause it's time to go. Dave's got the classics, let the memories flow. TV shows and movies that we all hold so dear. On his YouTube channel he's keeping memories near. Dave Sundstrom, bringing back the good stuff, oh yeah.